Welcome to Bunch Formation, your newest favorite college football show. I am Chris Vannini, and I'm in a state of delirium, either because I'm on 4 hours of sleep after not much sleep, or it's because Indiana football won the national championship.
And I am David Ubben, and I am deeply disappointed in our Ernest King, Fernando Mendoza, for dropping an F-bomb on live television. What were the Vegas odds on that one coming into the game? I'd like to know that.
Welcome, everybody. I am still in Miami as of Tuesday morning when we're recording this. Apologies if my audio is a little bit off, had an issue with the cord, but we're making do with what we do. We thought I considered asking David at 4 a.m. if he wanted to record the show then, but I don't think he was up for it.
I wasn't going to get that message. How are we feeling this morning, Chris? You cover these championship games, any of these bowl games. It gets late. It's a problem. How are we doing this morning?
I'm feeling great because all you ever want as a media member in these moments is to have a good game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I covered Georgia TCU. That was my first national championship game I ever covered. And I was like, well, that wasn't. I mean, like I'm obviously happy to be there, but if you're going to be there, you want it to be a good game, and we got a good game. Indiana beats Miami 27-21. We'll get into the game in a minute, but you mentioned the Mendoza thing. Very funny about that. So game ends, we all run out on the field. And I'm like, I got to find Mendoza. Like when I'm at a game, I want to find the quarterback and find the scene around the quarterback and see what he does. And he's obviously a great story. He does the interview with Holly Rowe on TV. And right after that, he does an interview with ESPN Radio. And I'm listening to it. And I like, it's loud. There's so much going on. And I'm like, wait, did Mendoza just drop an F-bomb? And I'm like, I think that's what he said. And then he finishes that interview. And I asked the ESPN Radio guy, I'm like, did he just curse? And the guy's like, yeah. I was like, oh, man.
Was that our guy, Ian Fitzsimmons? I think it was.
Right? It might have been.
And Dallas guy. Anyway, go ahead.
And I was like, oh, I've got something here that not a lot of other people may have noticed. And then Mendoza goes on the stage and says it to the world.
That's unfortunate, Chris, because that would have been a great lead to your story. And then I had to do like a triple take because I was kind of like reading tweets and I was kind of paying attention to the post-game stuff. I was comfortably in my recliner knowing that the sweet embrace of my mattress was but 30 or 40 minutes away. It's a great feeling versus running around post-game when it's like 4 hours. But
hold on. Yeah, he like kind of like sped through it too. Mm-hmm. Like he didn't like emphasize that he sped through it.
Yeah.
And I wrote a story that went up Monday, the day of the game. Basically, the story is basically, why does Fernando Mendoza talk like that? I'll link to it in the show notes. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I asked teammates, I was like, he really never curses? And they're like, no, he doesn't. You'll be playing FIFA against him and you score on him and he'll yell out, gosh darn it. Like that's what he really is. And so after the game of the press conference, I asked him, I said, you dropped a curse word there. And he laughed and he goes, you know, people always say I have these cookie cutter answers and whatnot, but I figured, well, if there was ever a time, just let the floodgates open. And he really did. Please check out the show notes if you want to see stories we wrote, stuff from the game. We I probably won't have timestamps in there because I got to hurry to the airport after this.
Chris is lazy. That's what we're saying.
Please send your feedback to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. We are Bunch Formation on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Please follow that. And please give us a 5-star review and comment if you can. We'll read all of them on the show. Not this one because we want to kind of get through to the show. Also, David, you said you were relaxed, ready to go to bed. That's not what you were saying last night in our group chats and Slack. You were stressed out that you had nothing to do.
Well, once the game ends, you can kind of feel it, but it's weird because kind of throughout the playoff, we've had obviously people on site, we've had people at home that were helping out. We have a big staff. People had it covered. I chipped in on a couple things last night, and I was helping out with our live blog with my deep insights on things. But like after the game, like the game ends, and you're like, in the fourth quarter, you're kind of like, I got to kind of narrow down what I'm doing, kind of have a plan, figure out where I'm going. And I felt that tension, but I I didn't have anything on the docket. You can, if something comes up, you can sort of pitch stuff, but in something like this where it's like we have all hands on deck, like there's not that much to do post game. So I was kind of just hanging out.
You just tweet through it. So it's what we all do. Yeah. David, by the way, we are now in 2026. That means people are making New Year's resolutions to exercise more, get involved in their communities. If you're a trainer, a coach, someone who organizes a running club, you need to use Pony. Pony, that's Poney, is a new social scheduling app that makes getting your groups together so much easier. They are the newest and only exclusive in-show sponsor of Bunch Formation, and we are a big fan of what they do.
And there's 10 million organizers currently in the United States alone, and I don't think that even counts family and friends, just getting people together. But no other app combines advanced scheduling tools with payment collection like Pony does. If you are an organizer, you got to juggle texts, Venmos, calendar apps, spreadsheets, all that stuff. Pony puts it all together in one easy app.
If you want to convert a 4th and 4 with the boys, use Pony to do that. And in January, Pony is releasing a pro group organizer feature, allowing you to collect payments from clients before they book. They're also releasing a private beta version that you'll be able to sign up for soon.
And everybody's dealt with last minute cancellations. It's frustrating, but it's also expensive. It adds up. For organizers, that can mean 20 to 30% of lost revenue. But Pony has automated wait lists. So if somebody drops out, it will automatically add the next person available and shoot them a message to confirm. For trainers, for instance, they spend 10 plus hours a week on administrative work instead of teaching and doing what they got into the business to do. Pony can eliminate that last-minute scrambling and automatically keep an event at capacity.
Your clients do not have to download the app. You just send them the link with the info, and Pony does the work for you. It's frictionless infrastructure with Pony, no problem. Download Pony today and make organizing effortless. That's Pony, Poney. Real plans with real friends and real clients made easy. Download Pony in the App Store or at letspony.com. David, let's fully get into talking about.
Let's do it. Good game, great game, memorable game.
The kids are playing their tail off, and the coaches are screwing it up.
As I mentioned, Indiana 27, Miami 21. I don't even know, where do you want to start with this? Because there's so many different places we could go.
I think you got to me, the story of this game, in some ways Indiana's season, but like a lot of college football games, I think you got to start with the mistakes. Indiana made some. They made more mistakes than we have seen them make. I think it's interesting. Not only is Indiana national champion, Chris, I would say Indiana played one of its worst games of the season and beat a really good team.
A big part of that is due to Miami, though.
Sure. And the offensive line, from Indiana in the locker room was talking about how they knew Miami's defensive front was going to be a test, but even they were like, this is a lot. And you saw that on tape when you watched them play. I didn't get to watch the coach's film room, by the way. I'm very excited to watch that after the show. Apparently, it was really good. It's not, I can't watch it for Monday Night Football that I don't really care about. I'll watch the Manning cast. But a national championship game, I can't be watching coach's film room. But after the fact, it's good. Anyway, all that to say, Indiana made a lot of mistakes in this game. I don't count protection issues because I think that's mine, but drop passes. The timeout stuff kind of late was not great. They had trouble converting in the red zone, which they've traditionally been pretty good at, but they didn't make the backbreakers. And giving up a punt block touchdown with 3 rushers.
You could make the case Miami blew the game.
Yeah, you can. Well, I mentioned the punt return, the punt block touchdown. That was the worst one. But you get stuffed in short yardage at least twice, maybe 3 times.
Twice on 3rd and 1. Yep, yes. On 3rd and 1, yep.
And then obviously the late pick where you don't really have to force that and you were being kind of baited. I mean, if Carson Beck throws that ball 50 times, is it caught? I mean, that's double coverage and you underthrew it. I don't know how many times you catch that. And their corner talked about it. He knew he had help over the top, Jamar Sharp, and he just sort of could trail the route. It's just not a good decision and a very bad throw. And then the decision making, late in the first half, you've already converted a 4th and short. You got 4th and 2 on the 33, and you settle for a 50-yarder to make it 10-3. I get the instinct to wanting to go into the locker room down one possession, but there's still 50 seconds on the clock. Even if you make that kick, there's no guarantee. I would say almost the odds are against you.
Well,
They're going in the locker room down one possession. So to kick it, I hated that decision, and then you missed the kick anyway, and just not a fan.
I think there was 38 seconds left on the field goal because he let the clock Cristobal.
I think that's right.
Run all the way
that's
down
right.
before.
Still,
but you think about it, you doinked a field goal, you allowed a punt block touchdown. That's a 10-point swing right there in a game that
you
was
lost by
6 points. Indiana, which has I think like 8 block punts over the last 2 years, they do punt block. They weren't trying to block that punt.
No.
Kurt Cignetti even said it after the game, and Kamara said on the previous punt he had almost got there, and he was like, "Well, on this one, I'm just going to go for it and shoot my shot." And it doesn't help that the punter has the longest windup in the world as he's kind of rolling into where Kamara is, and Miami just totally blew that. But not only do you have the doinked field goal, you have the blocked punt touchdown. You threw the only interception of the game at the end, but also you had a stop in the first half when Ruben Bain, I think 2 Miami guys, jumped offside on a 3rd and 12, I think it was. They got the stop. It was going to be 4th down. Indiana was going to punt there at midfield. Instead, it's 3rd and 7. Indiana runs a run. It might have been a draw. They pick up the 1st down, score a touchdown on that drive. It was all the concerns you had about Miami. They get to delay a game out of the kickoff for the final drive of the game.
That's great. It didn't affect that much, but it's like you start the drive. You want like a 6-yard completion to a wide open receiver to start the drive. You don't want a delay a game. It just sets you off on the wrong foot.
And ultimately, like, Indiana didn't play great. A big part of that was, again, because of Miami. But like you said, they didn't do the things that lose you games. And that's kind of what I wrote about after the game. I said, like, this is a new era of college football. It doesn't mean the 3 stars are always going to beat the 5 stars. But what it means is because talent is so spread out now, games are decided at the margins. They're decided on a couple of key plays. They're decided on turnovers. They're decided on 3rd down. And that's what Indiana was always so good at all season. That's what the NFL is. The NFL, you're usually playing close games, and it's a couple things here that are the difference between winning and losing. And even though Miami never led in this game, maybe you don't say they blew it because it's not like they had a lead to give up, but they did the things that lose you the games in Indiana.
Yeah. It felt like the first half, I was like, Miami's got no shot here. And then the Fletcher run really flipped the game. From that point on, even when they're up double digits, you're like, Indiana's like, Miami's making them feel something they probably hadn't felt in quite some time. And you saw that this was not the tightest performance that we've seen from Indiana, and credit to Miami there. But yeah, I just think Indiana's been the best team all season. 16-0 is 16-0. First time since 1894. Is that correct?
Yeah, the only other time, 1894 Yale, which I didn't realize. Ralph Russo told me in the press box that Yale team, I think, did that within like a 60-day span because that's what football was. But
with leather helmets, no less. Can we get back to the 60-day season? I think there's a lot of coaches who would like that right now. The way the calendar is.
So let's go back to the beginning. The scene before the game was incredible. Yeah. I've never been to that stadium.
It stinks, but it's cool.
well, I've heard it's a nightmare to get to. We, the elites in the media, got a police escort with a bus, so it was fine on our end there. But it's a cool looking stadium. I love the overhang. It keeps the noise in. It looks really nice. The press box situation was fine enough for us. I didn't get out to the concourse, so I can't speak to the end of it. But like, I'm walking around and I'm like, I'd been to 2 previous national championship games, and they were both in domes. And the fact that this game was like partially outdoors, to me, added to just kind of the aura of it all. It felt bigger when you could see like the night sky above you, and suddenly the stars start showing up. DJ Khaled and Fat Joe are there. All the Miami alums show up there. Marco Rubio shows up at one point. And everybody, Stephen A. Smith is like as big a celebrity as anybody in that group. And you're like, wow, this really is the Miami celebrities are here. And they're all like in one corner of the end zone, basically, which is the Miami corner. You go walk around, it's where the tunnels are too, but you go walk around the rest where the Indiana people are. No celebrities, lots of open space. I was like, everybody's just on brand here. And ultimately, I put the crowd split at like 65-35 Indiana. Like it was more than I thought it would be.
That is embarrassing. You can say what you want. I get all the reasons it happened. Can you imagine, Chris, if any team in the SEC or the Big Ten was hosting a national championship game at their own stadium and got run out of their like? That's embarrassing. I don't care what the reasons are. You cannot let that happen. That's like what happened to like SMU in the 2000s when Texas Tech or Texas A&M would come play. They get run out of their own stadium like that. That's sad. Of affairs, but you're telling me you didn't see NBA Jam legend Calbert Chaney on the Indiana sidelines?
Oh, I did not actually. But the other issue though is like Miami's a pretty small school. In Indiana, you may have heard, has the largest living alumni base in the country. But the Indiana fans that were there were very, very loud. It did not sound like a 65-35 split. It sounded like a 50-50 split. And so I wanted to shout out the Indiana fans, the Miami fans who were there. But Indiana showed up, man, because it's never going to get better than this. Like we said, the first time you do something is always the best one. And they really showed up. And the game starts off, and Indiana's just cooking Miami with the RPO game. Like Fernando Mendoza's just his decision making, his arm strength to get it to the opposite hash. I was like, man, I don't know if Miami's gonna be able to stop this at all. And Miami adjusted. They stopped putting so much space in between the guys, and then it's a 10-0 game at halftime. It could have been 10-3. It could have been 3-0. Just a couple of Indiana mistakes. I'm like, Miami's still in this game, as bad as this looks. And then Miami dominates the third quarter. It was like 150 to 11 yards.
Yeah.
Fletcher breaks the big run. When he breaks that big run, you're like, oh, Indiana was letting Miami hang around, and we got a game now. That was pretty cool. What was your feeling around that point?
It was kind of like we're going to see if they have to answer. I think it would have been interesting to see how this game plays out if Miami ever got down, because we haven't really seen them in that spot since the Penn State game.
You mean
no, if Miami went down, because we haven't really seen them in that spot where it's like, I'm trying to think if they've been in sort of a gotta have it mode. You know, there's a couple moments in the Big Ten championship game. I was covering the ACC championship, so I didn't watch that game as closely as I would have liked. But it didn't feel like they had a lot of situations where it's like, oh, we absolutely have to have this play or this game is over. And like I said, I think we've seen that since Penn State, but Miami never put them in that position. They made a bunch of plays, and I think ultimately, well, that's what I'm saying. When the game was hanging in the balance, not necessarily where Indiana has to make a play or it's over, but 2 Charlie Becker catches, which were going to go down in history. Obviously, the iconic Fernando Mendoza run where he's just pinballing around and then diving for the end zone and taking a huge shot to the back. Did you see his arm? Holly Rowe tweeted out some pictures. I don't even know what happened to his arms, but they looked bruised and scraped, and he took a beating from the start. He's bleeding from the lip in the first drive. I did agree with Kurt Cignetti that at least the one off the play action was an open and shut personal foul. The other ones were a little iffy.
The one where the Miami player lowers, that's the definition of targeting, man. Lowers his head right into the chin, and Ralph in the press box was like, well, that's what happens when you try to play a blocker when you don't need to on a fake. I'm like, Ralph, he targeted him. That was a little bit too far. Kurt Cignetti complained about that on the halftime interview. Miami was going to make Fernando Mendoza feel it. That was the message. And they did. And I saw Mendoza's arm. I was right there at the end of the game. There was a stretch in the third quarter where Miami sacked Mendoza 3 times out of 4 dropbacks. In that third quarter, they really figured it out. And Indiana only allows 1 sack a game. And Miami only finished with 6 TFLs, but it felt like every single one was a loss of 7 yards. There were some of those run plays went wide and a guy lost 5. And that's what Miami did against Ohio State. You would get them in the second and third and longs because of a big sack, and it would blow up a drive. And that happened quite a few times in this game. Bain was incredible. Mesidor was awesome. That Miami defensive front just kept coming, man. And they, and like you said, the Indiana offensive line after the game was like, yeah, that was, I mean, you could make the case Miami won the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think it was close. They needed to dominate it because they don't have the playmakers on the outside of Malachi Corley. Excuse me,
Tony.
Tony. How many times am I going to call? I think it's like the third time we've done that this season. Just watching a lot of Western Kentucky football. Anyway, Malachi Tony, that's like outside of him, you got some good players, but nobody that's a game changer. But yeah, I think ultimately they needed to dominate up front. They didn't do that, to quote Ed Reed. And I will say that one of the things that I did take away from that game, and I kind of thought this coming into the semifinals, really, if I had to bet on one guy's NFL future of those last 4 teams, I think it would be Ruben Bain.
So the thing is,
I don't see a way that he is not a really, really good NFL player.
Well, the thing is, I believe that Mesidor is the higher prospect.
I think it's because he's younger, isn't that right? I think Bain is kind of older.
I'm pulling up our colleague Dane Brugler's thing here. He's got Bain at 10, Mesidor. But he had Mesidor in the first round down at 30. But he has Bain like number 10. So he's not going to be like a top guy. And I saw some people being like, do not let this guy like fall to the Ravens. It feels like that's destined to happen.
Yeah, exactly. That's like they always end up with those guys, the Patrick Queens of the world, the Marlon Humphreys of the world. Yeah.
And so in that fourth quarter, so it's 17-14. It was 17-7. Like, we're in the press box, we're all like starting to kind of write our Indiana wins stories, like get the bone together. But then Miami scores, and it's 74. It's a game again. Like, all right, it's still a game here. Can't write too much. And then Indiana converts 2 fourth downs on a drive to go up 24-14. And the first one, no, it might have been the second one. But yeah, the first one's the throw to Charlie Becker. Great catch. It was not a good back shoulder throw. It was
he threw it way too far inside, and it was a little too far behind him. He had to stop way down, and we didn't see as many from Surratt in this game, but still the contested catches. Surratt was being mugged on a couple of those, and the officials just would not call PI for anything all night. There were holds. They were letting him play in the secondary. I was okay with it, but there is a line there.
I was okay with it too, also because that was how the whole playoff went. Like, there were not a lot of flags in any of these playoff games, really. And I think it's kind of like, it's like in hockey where you're like, at least just, or basketball even, where you're just like, just be consistent. And I think the refs were consistent on both sides on that. But yeah, like up until that point, we had said one of my keys coming into the game was, can Indiana continue to make all the contested catches? They don't drop anything. They had the second lowest drop rate in the country entering this game. And they made all the contested catches against Oregon. And Surratt dropped, I guess. He definitely dropped one.
There was one real drop on the little, that was like 3rd and 4, kind of right at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. And then a couple on the edges, where he was getting absolutely.
But Indiana still knows that's their bread and butter, and they know Miami's probably thinking back shoulder to Surratt is our go-to play, and so they instead do back shoulder throw to Becker, who makes the catch on the first one, and then Indiana gets down and they call timeout before the 4th and 4, and I don't think you guys could see it. I think you guys were in commercial.
They didn't really discuss it. I was on the TV. I was like, how is there not a camera like on the sideline? I don't know what is happening. Are you talking about the second one before the
second one? But they sent out the kick. But they sent out the kicker first. Indiana did, and then changed their mind and then go out with Mendoza on 4th and 4, and they call QB draw. And if you wanted an iconic moment, an image from this game, it's Mendoza following his blocker, bouncing off bodies, getting the first down, then spinning and reaching out. The pictures are fantastic. That's the thing Indiana fans are going to frame up forever. They're going to put it in the bars in Bloomington. It was awesome.
So you might have missed Mendoza on SVP. You were probably busy. I was sitting on my recliner. So he talked about that play. So there's actually a pass built off of that play. And basically, if he gets, I couldn't remember exactly. I think if he said if he got a zone look, it's a throw. If it's a man look, then he takes off. But they gave him kind of like a mixed look. Like they gave him a man look, I think, on his left and a zone look on his right. And he was like, I'm not really sure. I have to make a decision as soon as I get it. And he's like, screw it. I'm just going to take it. He's like, I'm going to die for my team and just go in there. So I think the uncertainty, he put it on his shoulders. But it's interesting that there's a pass built off of that draw.
But the reason I think the front did that was because I don't think they got the full call. You can see the green dot linebacker, I think it was. He tells some of the inside guys, but they don't fully all get it. There may have supposed to have been a stunt in there, and instead there's not, and it's right in that hole where Mendoza is able to follow his blocker, get in there. And that's another game management communication thing from Miami, so to speak. And Cignetti said after the game that they installed that QB draw, I think this week or last week, heading into the game. It was not something they had done a lot or even showed. I mean, that's a 4th and 4 QB draw. And that
did he say they spent? I think
call.
He said they spent 45 minutes arguing about how to block it, which I think speaks to the detail oriented nature of the staff. Yeah, I heard a lot of staff stories about disagreements, in game planning leading up. I'd like to know what day that argument was on. Is that a Sunday argument? Is that a Monday? Because if that's a Thursday argument, that's crazy. But I'm guessing it was pretty early in the week, but it's still funny. Can we talk about the second 4th down decision?
Well, hold on. So we do that, and then Indiana's back up 10 in the 4th, and we're back to all right, start to kind of write our Indiana wins stuff because we're going to go down to the field with 5 minutes left, and Miami goes boom, 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 touchdown, and Tony gets a couple of big plays, and you're like, wow, shoot, it's still a close game, and now I got to go down to the field, and I gotta go down to the field for a close game, and so Indiana eventually gets the ball. You're talking about the when Indiana kicked the field goal.
Yeah, I mean they had the exact same situation basically.
So wait, let me set that up. So
go ahead.
Let me set that up first. So it gets to 2nd and 1, and Indiana has Miami has 1 or 2 timeouts left, but it's to the point where if they get the first down, the game's pretty much over. And it's almost like if you're Miami, should you have just purposely gone off?
I know. I literally on that 9-yard run on first down, I was like, that's the worst possible thing that could have happened to Miami. A 9-yard run there.
But then Indiana, rare penalty, false start, sets up 2nd and 6, and it's
horrific penalty in that situation. You can't do that.
And so Indiana, then what do you do here? They run twice. To set up 4th down and 6, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that they did that and just ran the clock because I turned to Reese Davis, who I was standing next to, and I was like, do you go for it? He's like, yeah, you have to. I mean, we had just seen Indiana do it twice.
Exact same situation.
And instead of going for the win, they kicked the field goal. And I'm like, Miami's got the ball.
I know.
Win this.
So this is the part of the math that I don't understand, where you go for it the first time and you don't, because so you're up 3, okay, and with what they got the ball back basically a minute 50, no timeouts. That's plenty of time in college football. If you're up 3, okay, so let's say you don't get that 4th down, okay, that fundamentally changes how Miami handles that last drive. You have Mario Cristobal, who we will call a questionable game manager in time, in close situations like that. And there's a pretty good chance that they never put a ball in the end zone and they kick it and send it to overtime. If you get it, if you score a touchdown, you're probably going to win. If you get the first down, the game is literally over.
That is the theory. That is the theory of aggression, where if a team only needs a field goal, they won't go for the touchdown.
Yes, but when you give them the ball with a minute 50, down 6, you have to get a stop, and you are going to have to make a play. Now, they made that play, so credit to them. But the math there, especially when you already made that decision, maybe they didn't have a good play. I think they were that 3rd down run, I think, was telegraphing, we are going to take this to 6, and we're going to make Miami make a play and leave this game in our defense's hands. But, man, the math there is pretty complicated. But because you're up 3 there, I think I probably go for that. But you got to have a good play. You've got the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. I want to put the game in his hands. Maybe not quarterback draw again, but there's a lot of good things that can happen there if you give it to him. Didn't like the call decision.
I don't know if Cignetti ever explained it. Part of my guess is that 4th and 6 is a lot different than 4th and 4.
That's true.
And you're definitely going to have to pass the ball, and you're not protecting very well, and you don't have as much space to throw a deep back shoulder throw down the sideline. That is my guess. I am surprised though that he didn't. I am surprised that he kicked it for all the reasons that you said.
I think that's if Indiana loses that game, that's the decision that haunts you, and then the game looks very, very different because of the things that we talked about at the top. You got a punt return block, Russian 3 and punt safe for a touchdown, and you stuffed them on. You had a double-digit lead at halftime. You stuffed them on a couple of 4th downs, and you lose the game. I mean, it all kind of goes back to the lack of aggression late, which we have not really seen from Cignetti. Again, there's a case either way, but the lack of consistency is very interesting to me. And there are some subtle differences in there, but I think you had to go for that.
I'm going to wonder, like maybe you were hoping to pick up like 2 yards on that run and then go for it.
I'm sure they were. I think that's, if it was 4th and 3, I do wonder if things are different, but
yeah. So then we get to the final drive and Miami gets a delay of game out of the kickoff, which
very curious. I'd like to hear when there's 100 different things in the season and Carson Beck and all that stuff, when there's a lot of things to ask about, that's probably not going to come up. I'm very curious how you get a delay of game in that situation. Just disaster.
So, but then a 2nd and 15, incomplete pass from Carson Beck to set up 3rd and 15. But Indiana has committed a roughing the passer penalty. I didn't see it great down in the field. Was it a
They
good
showed
call?
it replay. It was late. It was a clean hit, but it was like a beat too late. It was a good call. It was the right call.
And then Carson Beck was down for a second too. Like it looked like it shook
He
him
was
up.
okay. I think he just was shaken up. It was a big hit, but it was in the chest. It wasn't the kind of hit that like a guy gets hurt on. You've got protection there. I'm sure he just got rocked and he just kind of had to collect himself a little bit. So yeah.
And then completes, 1, 2, 3, 3 passes in a row to get to midfield. And there's like almost a full minute left. And you're like,
yeah,
holy crap. Like this is getting really close. And then I'm right there. I'm right there on the sideline and I see the ball go in the air. And I was like, well, that's not a good throw. And Sharp, the cornerback, just undercuts it for the easy interception. It looked like Indiana was, I think, running a cover 2. There was safety help there. I don't know. I think I think the receiver may have run a incorrect route based on the coverage as well. But that's good. And Richard Sherman said after the game, that's really good coverage from the Indiana DB, which is if there's nobody coming in the flat, stay with your guy. Keep going downfield with your guy. It's exactly what happened.
He baited him into it, and then he threw a horrible ball that didn't really – I mean, on some level, the receiver's got to come back to that and fight and maybe play DB if he has to. But just he's not open. Like, he's just not – there's – like I said, you could throw that ball 50 times. I'm not sure you complete it. The reason why he's trailing him, again, is because the safety – sees him. There's nobody else on that whole side of the field. Correct. He's way over the top. I don't even think he flipped his hips yet. His hips might have been parallel to the sideline. It wasn't like he was running. Like they had that play completely under control and just a bad decision and a bad throw, and it cost you the season. Did you see the tweet from our guy David Hale at ESPN, Chris?
I did. That tweet was Carson Beck has 6 losses in his career as a quarterback, and in 4 of those, the last offensive play of the game, last real offensive play, was a Carson Beck interception with the chance to take the lead.
Before that drive,
and by the way, 3 of those this year, I was at 2 of them. One of which was the SMU game.
You're slacky. You didn't go to that LSD Louisville, whatever 5 overtime game, whatever that was. Before that drive started, I tweeted a literal Carson Beck legacy drive incoming. And one way or the other, it was correct. Like, this is, you don't want to bury a kid. Carson Beck, he's had an interesting career. Seems like a nice enough guy. That's kind of going to be his legacy. Like, a really good player in a lot more moments than he's not. but in the biggest moments, just seemed to make really rough mistakes. And that Notre Dame game early in the season was kind of one of the moments that he didn't. And obviously 3 playoff wins. Congratulations to him. But man, like for better or worse, I do think for Georgia fans and Miami fans alike, that is kind of how he's going to be remembered. And that's tough. And especially the way last season ended with the elbow injury and not being able to carry Georgia into the playoff and kind of having to hand that off to Gunnar Stockton. I feel bad for Carson. People were kind of killing him because I guess he didn't take his helmet off and just kind of walked off the field. But man, like when that's your career and it ends, well, I'm just saying when that's your career, when it's over, and like, listen, there's a lot of plays in the game, a lot of reasons why a lot of things happen. But when the season ends and you lose the national championship because of a mistake that you made, I don't know what that weight feels like. I have not experienced that, but I'm never going to begrudge a kid for how you handle that. I mean, unless he's out there fighting people, which some Miami players were. He
wasn't Mark Fletchering it out there.
Yeah. By the way, Mark Fletcher coming back next year, I would not be surprised if we see a suspension coming off of that. He punched an Indiana player. Well, it's basically sucker punched him.
Well, tried to. I don't think he made contact. It didn't seem like.
Yeah, I think intent is the issue here, Chris. But so it just tough way to go out for Carson Beck. But I appreciated watching the Carson Beck experience this year, for better or worse. When you think about, the hero's journey, the narrative arc of his season, Carson Beck, one of the 5 most compelling people in college football this year, I would say maybe 3.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, because a lot that comes with it. He was the hyped guy up at Georgia. He was going to be potentially number 1 pick. People thought he has a bad season. He gets hurt. He goes to Miami. Georgia kind of kicks him in the tail on the way out by trying to basically tell everybody that everybody loved Gunnar Stockton more. He goes to Miami. He's dating a Cavender twin. He got a Lambo. It gets stolen. He breaks up with his girlfriend. Like, he went through a lot. And then people take his quote at media day about going to class out of context. He took classes at Miami. He was in graduate programs. He didn't have class now because it's spring semester. And guys who are going to the NFL or are done don't enroll for the spring semester. That was totally normal. Don't make a big deal out of that. I think before we get to Indiana, Miami as a whole, like that team played so freaking hard in this game, and to continually fight back and to stay in this game when it would have been so easy to be like, we're down 10 in the 4th. That's it. No, Carson Beck's still out there scrambling, finding someone open downfield. Tony's running his butt off down the field, making plays. In Miami just kept coming. Like, they covered the spread in this game, by the way. It was 8.5 point Indiana. I thought Indiana was going to win big.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in the media did. A lot of people did. And Miami played really hard, and they deserved to be there. They shook up Indiana in a way that very few, if anybody, did this season. That was a valiant effort. Absolutely, obviously deserved to be in the championship game, and their performance in the game was very, very good. It's just a couple of bad mistakes is the difference between winning it all, and I think that's the thing that's going to haunt them forever. And Mario Cristobal said after the game, he's like, "You don't just get mad and come back and do it again the next year. Like, that is not how this works." He knows he may never have this chance again.
Something we should talk about from a macro perspective in the playoff era, Chris, which is, and I'll say this, that I'm okay with this. I kind of like this feature that's new in college football, which is the playoff really gives you an opportunity, some would say a risk, we've seen that a couple times, to redefine your season. Mm-hmm. And Oregon experienced the worst of this last year, where you come in 13-0 and you just get blitzed by a red-hot Ohio State team. But Ohio State obviously did it last year, redefining what was basically a lost season in a cloud of mace on their home field, a month earlier. And I think Miami did that because Miami, kind of like Carson Beck, had their own weird arc of the season where it's October and we're talking about this is maybe the best team in the country. And then we finish.
I had him at number 1 when they beat Notre Dame, I think.
And we finish October, and you have the Louisville loss, which was kind of fluky, but like it's a loss.
Fluky.
SMU, you play terrible. You make a lot of the same mistakes. And you're like, well, it's the Mario Cristobal experience. Miami came up short again. They're not going to get in the playoff. They sneak in the playoff at the 11th hour. And that's not going to be the story of their season. The story of their season is they rediscovered themselves down the stretch and in the playoff. You won 3 playoff games. You proved you were one of the best teams in the country, probably one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country, and you played your way back to that. I think there's a class of people who maybe don't like that seasons are going to be defined by what happened in the playoff, but I think teams can change their fortune in really acute, lasting ways, and I kind of like that. And I think it gives the playoff so much just weight. And we kind of knew that, but we've seen with some unpredictable outcomes. I mean, the last team in the field this year gets all the way to the last game of the season. Ohio State, rescues their season after Michigan. I think that the cynics' view of that is, well, it devalues what happened earlier in the regular season. Yeah. And I think that's somewhat of a fair critique to some degree. But I like that you have a chance for teams to redefine how their season is going to be remembered once they get in the bracket.
I would just say we're not going to get into playoff expansion, but it's why I don't like playoff expansion, which is the drama of the regular season is making the playoff. And you have to still have a high bar to make the playoff. That's how you keep the regular season from being important. Miami's only here because they beat Notre Dame in the regular season. If they had played somebody else, probably would have been Notre Dame instead. So
that's a Steve Sarkisian, by the way.
Steve Sarkisian says last spring, we're never going to have a 16-0 national championship. It's too hard. If they do, they'll build a statue of them. That's not going to happen. Well, 1 year later, it did happen, and it happened at Indiana, who didn't go through a G5 type of schedule or even a last year Indiana type of schedule. They beat 6 top 25 teams ultimately, or 6 top 10 teams, I think, or top 10, top 25, something like that. The Indiana Hoosiers, the national champions, the best team all season long. And there was a good quote in Bruce Feldman's story before the game about what other coaches think, and said, there's nobody on that Indiana defense that scares you, but they're just better than you. Yeah. And that's really what it is.
I have 2 major thoughts on Indiana. I'll start small. I think it's interesting when we've seen these programs break through. I think Baylor is probably the best example. We've said, when they don't have the talent to stack up, it's because they're doing something schematically that the sport has not caught up to. And one of the most interesting things I think about Indiana's rise, they don't do anything interesting. They schematically, it's like, I wouldn't call it base stuff, but they're not doing anything that you haven't seen 100 times. They're just doing it in a way that is executed so perfectly, and the technique is so strong in how they block stuff and receivers getting open. It's like they move people up front, and then they get people open down the field, and then on defense, they win up front, they tackle well, they don't play a lot of umbrella coverage, but they don't want you to go over the top. They want you to work your way down the field, and then when you make a mistake and there's a tip ball, they're going to catch it, and then they're going to just pound you on the other side. It's not like, the Baylor system legitimately shifted the sport. Like, you got a dozen teams or more running that offense or versions of it across the sport. Nobody's going to be, somebody asked Kurt Cignetti about bringing people in, and he's like, I'm not one to court visitors or whatever. You're not going to learn anything schematically by going to an Indiana practice. They just do good stuff. My second Indiana thought is, we had Matt Baker in Bloomington, but the scenes from Assembly Hall, the scenes on the street, winning a national championship to me is a little bit like hosting College Game Day, the same conversation of if it's new to you and this is not something that happens routinely, it is very cool to see the scene. I don't think we had a lot of cars burned in Bloomington last night, but just awesome. Like the pure joy in Assembly Hall and crashing downtown and all that stuff. Man, that was great. I'm very happy for the Indiana fans that get to experience this sort of like fugue state. We're living inside of some kid's CFB 26 dynasty world right now.
Connor from Homefield, who was there and was even on ESPN before the game. We wrote a story about them before the game. Our colleague Brody Miller, who was there at the game. I didn't actually get to see him. He was like doing work for us, and I never saw him.
Yeah, he's right. I think he's writing about the experience. Yeah, I look forward to reading that. So,
our editor Kate, who Indiana fan, my father-in-law, who we had on last week, who was there for zero text during the game, by the way, from him. just
there's a lot of sports journalists with Indiana's background. Some of us call it the poor man's Missouri, but there's a lot of people in the field that went to Indiana.
So like, what does this Indiana win mean for the sport? It changes what everybody feels is possible.
Yeah,
this doesn't mean every team can do that, because Indiana did decide to take football seriously. Like I went through the numbers last week. Indiana's football budget has almost like tripled in the last 4 years. And the president, Pam Whitten, the AD, Scott Dolson, they have talked about this, how like 5 years ago, they were like, we need to take football seriously, because if we don't, we will become an afterthought, basically, because football is what drives everything. And so they
took them 100 years to figure this out, apparently.
So when people didn't think they were going to fire Tom Allen 2 years ago, because his buyout was like more than $15 million. And everybody's like, it's Indiana. They're not going to do that. And they did. That's when I was like, oh, interesting. And they hired Signetti. They dramatically increased the budget. I mean, you talk to people who know that program well. The roster budget before Signetti got there was pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
Even when NIL was in place. And now that roster budget is, other schools will tell you they think it's, above 20 million pretty easily just based on the transfers. Signetti after the game was like, it's not as high as people think. And I don't know if that was a shot at Nick Saban, who before the game was saying the Big Ten's good now because they pay players more than the SEC does. But
by the way, rich. Anyway,
Alabama Jones over there.
But I was just like, come on, dude. Like
Alabama Jones over there, but it does go to show that if you do take football seriously and you get the right people in the right place, you can do this. Like, it's not just Indiana. Alabama is in crisis mode right now, despite
Vanderbilt won 10 games this year.
Vanderbilt won 10. Georgia won back-to-back national championships. They haven't even reached the semifinals the last 3 years now. Mm-hmm. Like, Illinois continues to find success. Like, anything feels possible right now because of what Indiana has done. And that's good for the sport. That spreads hope to everybody. Like, there are issues. There are issues with teams that lose their entire roster when a coach leaves and stuff like that. But there are positives that come with that, which is that Curt Cignetti can take a bunch of James Madison guys to Indiana and do something pretty special. And look, James Madison was fine. They made the playoff this year. Like, if you know what you're doing, you can still make it work. And like, you have to sell hope to fans. That's the business. Like, all those Alabama Clemson games, they all blur together in my head. I couldn't tell you which game was where, who.
There was one when Alabama got destroyed, and then there was one that Hunter Renfrow. Like, you're right. They do.
And it's good. Like, how many people are like, how many fans are waking up thinking like, man, Indiana did that. Like, we could do something like that. And that's good, and that's exciting, and that, like, I think the Big Ten is slowly getting. So the Big Ten, by the way, 3 straight national championships from 3 different teams, none of them from expansion. 3 of the oldest teams in the conference's history. Like, that little area, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, where I grew up. Like, that's my home. That is the epicenter of college football elite right now, which boggles my mind.
I have a piece of advice for the Big Ten, which is every morning until the next season kicks off, you should just tweet from the official Big Ten account, the Big Ten, home of the last 3 national champions.
Dude.
And it should be noted, because the SEC, this is a big thing, 3 different programs.
Yeah. Do you think Minnesota fans are, do you think Minnesota fans are waking up chanting B1G like they were elsewhere? So
I don't think they are.
What,
I don't think so.
What's your point though? Quick side note, quick tangent. It's been the Big Ten's problem. There were last year when the playoff drama is going on and the SEC saying all these things, people in other conferences are telling me, where is the Big Ten? Why is the Big Ten not acting like it runs the sport and that it carries this and that? And Tony Petitti, the commissioner, was there, and he talked like very briefly to reporters. He didn't want to like talk very much. And it's like, dude, this is your moment to hold court and talk to everybody, talk about how great your league is, all these things. And he just didn't want to do it. And that's why the SEC continues to have such influences, because they're going to get out there and talk. Brett Bielema is the only Big Ten coach who likes to really like stand up for the Big Ten.
The Big Ten's got 3 national championships in a row. They make a sizable portion of more money than the SEC. We've got SEC legends like Nick Saban complaining about Big Ten teams paying their players more. Like, what are you literally right now? The SEC dominance theory is built around the top 25 rankings, recruiting rankings, and draft picks. Meanwhile, in the things that count, trophies and bank accounts, the Big Ten is lapping the field. And it's like, you should be crowing about that. And do you have anything else in the Big Ten, Chris? I wanted to hit on a macro.
Well, yeah, I'll pivot into that. But here's a line I got from, I talked to Indiana's president, Pam Whitten, after the game. And I closed my story with this. And I said, what does it say that Indiana could do this? And she told me, we represent that it's a new day. If you come at it with a new attitude and you're innovative and ambitious, you can reach the greatest heights. And we plan to stay here. And if you've seen what Indiana's doing in the portal, they do plan to stay there. And it just, again, like, it gives hope to everybody. And that is good for college football.
Mm-hmm. So I had kind of a weird week last week. Went to the coaching convention. We'll get into some of that later on. And then you have the national championship, and then obviously that caps the playoff. And it was kind of a dichotomy, because there's people complaining about the state of the sport, and their complaints are fair. There's so much wrong with the sport off the field now. It's such a mess. The calendar is broken. I'm writing a column about kind of the structure of the playoff, which I think really hurts the sport. We'll see what the TV ratings from last night's game were.
I'll come back to that. Remind me to come back to that point.
Yeah, the biggest stage of the sport is probably undercut by the calendar stretching out the way that it does. And yet, on the field, I don't think the sport's ever been better. I think it's a combination of the hope aspect that you talked about, but this is kind of what we thought we were getting in the 12-team playoff era, which was just an incredible amount of relevant games the last month of the season. If in the past, it felt like there was kind of, when you get to the last month of the season, there's like the national championship race, which is usually like 6 to 8 teams that even have any hope of kind of squeezing into that game. And then it's like the conference races, and then it's like rivalry week, and they're kind of all different things. Now it's kind of all the same thing. That all these games do affect the bigger picture. Maybe it's a team's resume, maybe it's a conference, thing, all kinds of stuff. And there's teams that are still playing the conference races. Duke football is playing games that have real impact on the playoff field in November and even December. And so I think that's been great for the sport. And it's just a weird dichotomy of where we're at in college football when there's so much wrong off the field and so much broken on the field. And yet on the field, these past 2 seasons, I don't want to speak for you, Chris, I feel like I've enjoyed the regular season more than ever. I didn't feel a lot of the time like it gets a little tiring. I mean, our jobs can be physically demanding at sometimes, the sleep and all that stuff. But I haven't really felt that as much the last 2 years. It's because every week there's like big time games and stuff, you know the on-field product's going to deliver, but when the stakes are there, I feel like it changes a lot. And I just the sport is just so healthy on the field. The star power, guys sticking around. You had Carson Beck, who a lot of people know, is starting the season. You have a lot more household names. NIL has helped. Did you see there's like 40 early entrants in the NFL draft this year?
Yeah,
there was like
so this
130. Like
that's the thing. And I said this when Dante Moore announced he was coming back to Oregon, which I don't think we talked about in the show. That's good for college football. That a guy can decide, I could be the number 2 pick. No, I'll come back to college for a year. And this isn't a 7th year or an 8th year guy. Like, you want to have eligibility questions, that's fine. But NIL specifically is leading good players to stay in school for longer. That is fun. That is good. We're really seeing it in basketball as well. And it makes the whole thing better. And I forgot what I was going to go with the rest of it. But like, it's none of these things were planned. And it took I wrote this, it took 3 separate things happening to get to that moment of last night for both of those teams. One of them was NIL. That happened because California did a state law, and then everybody else had to do it. And NCAA is like, well, crap, I guess this is legal now. The second part was unlimited transfers, which was forced upon them by courts in 2024. And there are certain issues with that, absolutely. But the NCAA had already decided to allow everybody a one-time transfer. And then the third one is the expansion of the playoff, which college football did do. When they first announced the playoff expansion, I talked with Ari about this a bunch because Ari was upset. Ari Wasserman, our friend, he said, you're just going to have more Alabamas and Ohio States win the national championship. And he was right. And I agreed. And I was like, yeah, those teams are going to get more mulligans, which will lead to them winning more championships. What we didn't foresee was how NIL and the portal later on were going to suddenly democratize essentially where talent went and spread it out. It took all 3 of those things happening separately to create what is now very fun on-field stuff.
And so that's, I think, the tension for a lot of fans in college football, because all I hear is the sport's broken. We're tired of the transfers. And I think all those things are fair and true. And the complaints from casual and hardcore fans alike, I think, are fair. And yet, the on-field product. Indiana won a national championship in football. Right. And it was like, I wrote about this coming out of the Peach Bowl. It was a Cinderella story from the macro sense, but on the field, they just beat the crap out of teams for 16 games. Like, this is not a Cinderella.
If you're an Iowa State fan right now, you don't like the future of college football. You don't feel that. But at the same time, Indiana, with a very similar history, just won a championship. So, I'm not ready to say anything definitively about what the future of the sport is going to be. I'm not ready to say an Iowa State is never going to have a chance again, just because you don't have money. Like, yeah, the teams that have had the most money have always won the sport. But now you have more teams that have more money and are essentially in that one thing. So by the way, to your point, I'm not burnt out from this season. I'm upset that we don't have any more. So good news. Next year's championship game is on January 25th, which is going to be a problem. But the timing of the game, real quick, there's nothing you can really do about it right now. You want to change the regular season calendar, signing day, that stuff. You want to start a week earlier, get 2 bye weeks. You can do that actually pretty easily. But stuff on the back end of the season, you can't change. ESPN is not going to take rivalry week off of Thanksgiving weekend. It's too many good big games. They're not going to change that. The playoff, you can't really change as much because you want to have a little bit of time off for teams to rest a little bit. You have to do the quarterfinals around New Year's Day because ESPN is not going to want to get rid of a triple header. You want to have the national championship on January 1st, one game. ESPN's not going to want that. And even back in the day, it wasn't like that. The Texas USC game in 2005 was on the 4th or the 5th or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's way harder to do that than people think. It's been a Monday night game for 20 years. I know people complain about it every year. The only difference now is that, yes, it's coming off of four straight, interesting NFL playoff games and people might be footballed out. We'll see where that goes. But ultimately, we got a good game here. And in that second half, we're not thinking, oh, but what about the NFL playoff, blah, blah, blah. No, you're like in the moment, you're in the game, you're in the story. And that was great.
What a season, Chris. It's been fun.
So city of Miami, Dave, have you been here very much?
I've been to Miami quite a bit. I love Miami. Nothing against Miami. I don't know that I want to live there. I kind of feel similar to New York in that way, and that I probably wouldn't want to live there. But it's an incredible place. South Beach, extremely cool. Kind of hard to get to. You got to kind of weave your way through.
Figure that out. Every Uber was about 20 minutes longer than it said it was going to.
Yes, but Miami's incredible. Great American city. Great weather. It feels it's similar to New Orleans in that it's just very defined from the food. Yes, it is. And my point is that in the architecturally, culturally, food wise, culinarily, the architecture is very defined in New Orleans and in Miami. They're very different places, but you could not mistake Miami for any other U.S. city. And I think as somebody who spent a lot of time in Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, they're all kind of the same place. I love Miami. It is so defined. It is so uniquely its own.
It was an interesting big event city because the parties were awesome. I went to the ESPN party Saturday night where Flo Rida performed. Dude, that guy's a true pro. Didn't mail it in at all. Had a great time. I was out till 2 or 3 in the morning most nights because I was able to sleep in usually the next morning. But it took forever to get to a lot of places that weren't even actually very far. You were kind of better off finding an area and just sticking in that area. Ralph and I were down by South Beach for the playoff meeting. And then we're like, all right, let's go to a sports bar and watch the football games and eat and then go back to the hotel. Everything was totally packed. And then we had to walk out of South Beach to get to a place where an Uber could get to us, basically.
Yeah.
And everything's more expensive here than even in New York. This is the most expensive city I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. It's a cool place. I love Miami. Like I said, I've been down there for games a couple times, and I've covered the Orange Bowl twice in 4 years.
I'd never been here. I'd never been here or at the stadium. So a lot of fun. Indiana football is your national champion. Whoever won was going to be a great story either way.
Yeah.
But man, I love doing this. Let's finish this show the way we always do, and that is going to be by remembering some guys.
It's better than this. Guys being dudes.
And I'm going to go with Damian Harris, former Alabama running back, former co-host of Until Saturday. I saw Damian here at the game. He was here for CBS. We had a good chat. Great dude. He's killing it on TV.
He's doing a good job.
Our friend. We've tried to stay in touch, obviously, since the show made a change. But he was awesome. Saw him talking to a bunch of big names and stuff before the game, doing his job. So Damian Harris is my guy to remember. What about you?
I am gonna go.
Also, sorry. We're gonna try. I talked about this. We're gonna try to get him back on the show at some point to come on and talk about all kinds of things.
Love Damian. Damian's good dude. I am gonna go with Ray Lewis, known more for his NFL pursuits. But I don't know how much we talked about this a little bit at the start. I feel like this is more a Miami thing than almost any other program where the ghosts that came before you are literally haunting the sidelines.
Dude, Ray Lewis was talking to Carson Beck before.
I know. I'm like, I feel like this is awesome, but also if I was Carson Beck, I don't think I would like that. I'm like, please, Ray Lewis, give me some space before I'm going to So it's so college football because this is not something that you see in the NFL. I love it because this place means so much to so many people. Manny Navarro, our colleague, wrote a really good story about Calais Campbell, who kind of came into Miami at the tail end of it and has experienced, the last 20 years of getting trash talked in the locker room and watching his alma mater really struggle And it's been so cool to see them. I mean, Michael Irvin's been the day one guy. He's sort of the biggest face of this. But you can see the pride.
Did you see the Michael Irvin SNL bit?
I did. It was very funny. Great job. I don't know how we did not have him beating a trash can with a belt somewhere in that skit, but you live, you learn, I guess. We got to get some more college football influence on SNL, I guess. But you could feel and see the pride from those guys, and they were waiting in the tunnel, like as the players are coming off of the field, to like console their guys and dap them up and give them hugs. And man, that's college football. Like that's a tough night for those guys, but like those guys are going to be bound forever by what they did this season. They're going to be remembered very fondly forever by helping, sorry, Mario, bring the U back. And the U being back, even in lieu of the turnover chain, like just seeing the pride of those guys and seeing them on the sidelines, even if the game wasn't in Miami, which having it be in Miami and those ghosts of the program being more ever present. I mean, Clinton Portis is showing up, like just awesome, man. Love this sport.
The last thing I'll remember from this game is Fernando Mendoza after the game. Cursing, crying, trying to stay on message as he tries to do, but also coming over and hugging his mom in her wheelchair. I believe she's been battling MS for a long time.
Like 20 years, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And while he's doing that, grandparents or aunts are next to me just speaking Spanish about things. And he's taking pictures with all his family members. And it was like, he was the story of the season. That's partly why I voted him with my Heisman vote. And this was the year of Indiana, from the national championship to the Heisman. The belief that a former two-star kid who first committed to Yale would go on to win the national championship. Indiana, man, unbelievable. I had so much fun this season. This show is not going away, by the way. We're going to keep going. We got lots
we'll be around. We'll figure out the cadence. We'll communicate that to you. You know what? We've talked a lot about Fernando Mendoza this year, and I've talked about how much I love his earnesty. But you know, you kind of saw it last night a little bit. One of my favorite things about Fernando Mendoza is that he doesn't seem to care about the opinions of the people that he doesn't love or that don't love him. Like, I love Fernando Mendoza as a football player. I don't know him. You know, I've talked to him a couple times. I don't know him. We don't have like a personal relationship. I certainly don't like love him as a person. Like, you know, I love him as a figure. He doesn't care what I have to say. He cares about his teammates. He cares about his family. And you can sort of see that in how he operates. And it's just awesome to see. Like the fact that he, like I said, I think it's interesting that he had this kind of complicated breakup with Cal, and Cal people seem to still love him. I think says a lot.
For the most part. Not everybody, but yeah, for the most part.
Yes. I think that speaks a lot to how you treat people and where you go. And I think he's going to be a really indelible college football star. I don't know what awaits his NFL career. You know, I suspect he'll have a fine NFL career, but man, like college football career. And
one last thing, by the way, since I'm here, I don't know if you can, I'm going to turn my camera here. This is a pretty good view. Well, how about that? You can see the water out there.
Nice. That's pretty solid. What was the media hotel?
The JW Marriott Marquis.
Oh, is that it? Okay, that's nice.
But Indiana national champions. We're kind of droning on here. Let's wrap up. I got to go catch a plane. We'll be back either later this week or early next week to talk more about college football as a whole. But thanks. I'm on 4 hours of sleep here. Dave, thanks for getting up early to do this. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Bunch Formation. For David Ubben, I'm Chris Vannini. Thank you for listening and watching the latest episode of Bunch Formation. We will talk to you at some point in the near future.
And even in defeat, guys, please bring back the turnover chain.
Maybe they would have won if they had done it.